Thank you, thank you. Good morning. My name's Nichole Prescott, and I am the Director of Student Success for E3 Alliance. I am really excited to see such a diverse crowd out here today. We've got out-of-school time program providers, we've got business leaders, we've got community leaders, we've got folks from higher ed, and that's great because it's going to take all of us working together to solve some of our challenges in our community. So 6,000 hours. Do you know how many school years that equates to? 4 3/4. That's a lot. Let me ask you a really quick question. How many, with a show of hands, has ever participated in some sort of out-of-school time activity? Whether it was summer camp or some sort of after-school activity. Okay, that's a lot of us, right? Was it fun? Did you get something out of it beyond just fun? Absolutely. Out-of-school time is a lot more than just fun and games, although that's a really important part of it as well. We know that high-quality out-of-school time programs can really impact in a very positive way our students' lives, and particularly have a greater impact on the lives of our low-income students. So here we have a lot of different things that out-of-school time has proven to improve. We have increased school attendance, enhanced social and emotional learning, enhanced critical thinking skills, and of course we also know that out-of-school time activities reduces risky behaviors in our children. So 2 years ago, out-of-school time funders, including KDK-Harman and Andy Roddick Foundation and the City of Austin Parks and Recreation Department, invited E3 Alliance to guide a community planning process in out-of-school time that led to the development of an intermediary organization, and also invited us to conduct 2 different asset mapping and needs assessments. One was in summer learning, one was after school. Well, from those assessments, we learned that Central Texas is really unique. Of course, we always thought that, but we really have proof, particularly in our out-of-school time ecosystem. Central Texas has a constellation of smaller out-of-school time programs. You remember Hotan mentioning that we had over 1,000 education-related nonprofits? Well, not all of them are out-of-school time, but a whole bunch of them are. So most other big cities, and this is where we're different, most other big cities have a different provider makeup. They have a few really large providers. I did the animation. We have a few really large providers, or they have a few really large providers, and small providers kind of fill in the programmatic gaps. Well, Austin and Central Texas are different. We have a lot of small providers with a few big providers that fill in those programmatic gaps. So the good news is that there's a benefit to this, right? We have a lot of unique programming in out-of-school time. You can go and go to robotics camp. You can take lessons on steel drum. You can be part of Riverwatch or join a bike club. Well, the challenge is that because we're such a dispersed network of out-of-school time providers, that we don't have any centralized place to go and learn about up-to-date opportunities for out-of-school time. Well, this underscores the need for an intermediary organization. We have at the helm of this increasingly coordinated out-of-school time network Learn All the Time. And I believe that Allison Ivy, where are you, Allison? Allison Ivy is the new Executive Director of Learn All the Time. So, Learn All the Time is an organization that is going to start working on that data coordination piece, as well as improving access to and quality of our out-of-school time programs. So let's go ahead and take a deeper dive into the data. As I mentioned before, Central Texas has a lot of smaller out-of-school time organizations. Well, from our asset mapping and survey, we found out that the majority of the organizations served fewer than 250 students. When we take that group and look even closer, we find that out of those 250, or out of those organizations that serve 250, the majority actually serve 50 or fewer students. We also know that the majority of our programs focus on elementary or younger. We did a series of focus groups with our parents and guardians of students who are attending out-of-school time programs or would like to attend out-of-school time programs. And interestingly enough, even though we have so many programs that are focused on the early years, there's still unmet need. What we found out is that regardless of how many programs are serving pre-K, K, or elementary, there is still unmet need. Parents want more and more programs for younger students. Now, many of y'all are probably wondering, well, what's going on with the middle school students or the high school students? Well, by the time they're in middle school or high school, chances are they're involved in school-related sports, in various school-related activities, UIL, etc. They're also old enough to be home alone, or in many cases, they're already working. So this pie chart here represents our current understanding of the demographic makeup of students participating in out-of-school time. And as you can see, our programs are doing a pretty good job of serving those students who have historically struggled in our school systems. Okay, we're going to switch gears here. So we took all of that survey data from our out-of-school time asset mapping and needs assessment, and we mapped it up here on this map. And when I say we, I don't mean me. I actually mean our map guru back there, Joshua. Say hello, Joshua. He's our map guru. So if you have any questions, ask him. So we took all of that out-of-school time data, and we looked at the percentage of households living with children living in poverty. So the yellow piece represents households with few kids living in poverty. The darker pieces on the map represent more kids living in poverty. So we took all of the out-of-school time programs and mapped it on there. And as you can see, the majority are clustered around that I-35 corridor. But there are still some programs kind of out there in the periphery, right? So these kinds of maps help us to assess where there might be gaps in services. Here's another one. It looks similar, but it's different. This one's focusing on STEM programs, so that's science, technology, engineering, and math programs. And same formula here, right? It's mapped upon income disparity. You can see, too, that there is still an even more pronounced concentration of programs along I-35, yet there are still some eastern outliers there. One more. Does anybody see a difference in this map? This is focusing on college and career readiness. You still see a very pronounced, even more pronounced clustering of programs around or along the I-35 corridor, but you'll also see there are no more outliers. So the moral of the story is here is that we do have a very serious gap in those areas of highest need, right? You're not seeing many programs in those really, pinkish, fuchsia-colored areas, right? The highest need areas. Okay, well, we don't just do quantitative data. We also do a lot of qualitative data. So numbers are important, of course, but so are the thoughts and needs of the people who are actually working in this field and living it. So we did a series of focus groups. We did one with program providers, and we also did one with parents, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But we asked program providers, because they're the ones that are interfacing with these students every single day, what are the challenges of low-income youth in accessing high-quality out-of-school time programs? Without a doubt, transportation topped the list. And I will talk more about that in a moment. The second on the list was awareness of opportunities. So as I mentioned before, we've got a lot of small providers, but we have no centralized place for parents or practitioners to find up-to-date information. And even when there is information, it's often not in the language that these parents are fluent in. Parent or family scheduling challenges and cost are something I'm going to follow up with again in a moment. And it's not that I've talked about there's unmet need. It's not that our program providers don't want to meet the needs of our student population in Central Texas. They're facing their own challenges. They face funding challenges, capacity challenges, as well as staffing challenges. So, we decided to find out from the parents what they felt were the biggest challenges. Again, transportation, hands down, top of the list. Let me paint you a picture. Think about a low-income parent. Maybe they have only one vehicle, and they have a job that does not have a flexible work schedule. Their kid is attending an out-of-school time program across town. They've got to leave work when their boss tells them they can leave work to go across town in Austin traffic, right? And we can all relate to that one, to try to pick up their child on time. Very challenging for many parents. Now, imagine they have to take 3 or 4 buses to go pick up their child because they don't have a car. Now, imagine they've got multiple children because 60% of the families that we surveyed actually had anywhere between 2 and 5 children. So you've just compounded the challenge, right? So it was a little bit surprising, but convenience was the second thing that they brought up. Right? There are not a lot of programs near where families live. So if they're going to put their child in an out-of-school time program, oftentimes they're going to have to take public transportation or find a way to get their child there and back. Now, if their child is young, then that's a problem. They don't want to put their kids on public transportation, which comes to my second surprising point. There was a very pronounced concern over security. The fact of the matter is that parents do not want to hand their children over to program providers that they don't know and in a place that's not familiar to them. Now, that is absolutely no fault of the program providers. They're lovely people. They're wonderful. If not, they would not be working in out-of-school time. They're not doing it for the money, right? They're doing it for the love of children. However, what we found out is that parents would really prefer to take their children to out-of-school time programs located in their neighborhood schools, where they know the people they're dropping their kids off to, and they're familiar with the location. Oops. Now we come to cost. So let's think back to that low-income parent. Maybe they were able to put one of their children into an out-of-school time program. So familiar or not familiar, out-of-school time programs are often not accessible to parents because of cost. But in this case, they were able to get one of their children into an out-of-school time program. But they've got 3 more. Is that fair to the rest of the kids not having that opportunity? No. So for the majority of these parents, they choose not to put their kids into any of the out-of-school time programs rather than having to choose one to participate. And then the last piece on here is bilingual staff or information. So many of the parents mentioned that when they do interact with out-of-school time program staff, they don't really feel welcome. And they cite that the staff is not bilingual, so they have no way to really effectively communicate, and that the information that's provided is often not in their language. Again, I've spoken to a lot of our out-of-school time providers, and it's not that they don't want to recruit bilingual staff, they do, but it's very challenging. The second piece is that they do try to translate their information into at least one other language, usually Spanish, because 90% of our English language learners are Spanish speakers. But perception is reality, right? So there's a disconnect here. But there's also a really great opportunity. Okay, so I have thrown a lot of data at you today. I've talked about quantitative data, I've talked about qualitative data, and I have shown you geographical data. right? And I bet you're wondering, well, how am I supposed to use this data? Well, luckily for you, we have two guests today who are going to share with you the ways in which they have leveraged this data to improve access to high-quality out-of-school time programs for our Central Texas students. So it is my pleasure to introduce two bona fide OST champions shown here engaging in extracurricular activities. We've got Kimberly McNeeley, the Assistant Director of the Parks and Recreation Department for the City of Austin, and Melanie Moore, the Executive Director of the KDK-Harman Foundation. It's all yours.
Can you hear me? Okay. So thank you for allowing me to come here. As a representative of the City of Austin, and since I am an Assistant Director for the Parks and Recreation Department, I'm kind of in a unique situation where I am one of the large providers, so my department, and I have direct responsibility for program delivery. But it's also important for me as a representative of the city to think in the bigger picture and to think about how my department and my sister departments can positively impact funding opportunities and fill the gaps. And so I'm going to tell you two stories from both of those perspectives. So because of the data that E3 Alliance was able to provide me in a preliminary document much earlier in the season, I was able to advocate for in front of City Council. So your council members were gracious enough to provide to the Parks and Recreation Department funding that allowed me to help fill the gap in the teen area or the middle school area where we were able to actually implement 3 new leadership programs for individuals who are middle school to high school age, service learning projects, college readiness programs, and also because I am Parks and Recreation, we care a lot about nature. We're also trying to develop environmental leaders and environmental stewardship. And so that basic data allowed me to make some programmatic decisions and to ask for funding specifically to fill those gaps. But in a bigger picture, and this is where it hits home from our friends from AISD who said we can, take this program and divide it in half. Well, with all of you as providers and advocates, we can divide it in half and half and half and half. And because I'm not a data person, I don't know what that means, but let's just go like 180ths or something like that. But each of you can advocate for programming, right? And you can talk to your city council members and you can talk to your community leaders and let them know how important this work is. And so here's the things that I need you to know. Your city council members are currently talking and having policy discussions about equity and access. And it was because of the data that E3 Alliance was able to provide for me that I was able to help them understand where the gaps are in service. I was able to help them understand which zip codes were the zip codes that most needed out of school time. I was able to help them understand that from a Parks and Recreation perspective, that we had programs in 5 of those gap areas, but didn't have the capacity to accept any more children due to not enough funding. I was able to help them understand as a policy decision that this is now on their table for those individuals to decide, along with all of the other policy discussions they're having with transportation and utilities and those sorts of things. They have to now begin to decide where do they want to put the precious funding that they have? How do they want to be able to advocate for the different services that all of the citizens need? And so this is where your voice comes in, because now that E3 has given us this data and we can all talk the same language, and we now have a third-party intermediary in Learn all the time, we're going to have a powerful message to send to those individuals, and not just to our local elected officials, but to our state legislatures, because I just recently was reminded that we don't have any out-of-school time funding that is dedicated from a state level down to the local. So we have a education system that's funded, but we don't have anything funded for the after school or the out-of-school time. So this data, and collectively us, together can help individuals understand how important it is for us to begin advocating for our youth. Our return on investment, right? In our youth today, they're going to be our workforce of tomorrow. And so there's lots of ways for us to use this data to make our point. And I've been lucky enough to be the recipient of this information just a little bit before you were, so I was able to make those cases or start that movement, but we'll be counting on you, all of you, to help us continue that movement. And so I'll let Melanie take over from a KDK-Harman perspective.
Thank you. I want to say, is it on? This is true collaboration, using her microphone. I want to say thank you to Kimberly and to Nichole and Susan and the whole E3 team and everyone, many of you in this room who served on, I don't know what we would call ourselves, a task force over the past 18 months or so when we were walking through that community process. It was true public partner, funder, provider, government collaboration to come up with a way to organize the out-of-school time space, because that was a space that was, in looking at education, was really kind of disorganized in this region compared to other regions. And so having now Allison on board as the ED and learning all the time is fantastic. It's a first step. I'll tell you a little bit. The KDK-Harman Foundation is focused very narrowly on out-of-school time and primarily STEM and summer STEM in particular. We've funded summer STEM programming for the past 6 years, putting more than half of our entire annual grants budget toward that. When I came on board, I said, what are we getting for that? And so we started producing a summer STEM learning report where we were doing our own little collection of data with our staff of 1.5 to try to figure out what was happening in the summer STEM space. We're involved with the National STEM Funders Network, and I'm on the steering committee of the Out of School Time Interest Group for Grant Makers for Education. And the one word that can be summed up about the difference between poor and positive outcomes for students in out of school time is quality. And so it's important to have high quality programming, whether it's recreational or academic. And in many ways, out of school time is now the space where students can do art and music and sometimes sports and extracurricular academics, sometimes even robotics, because it won't fit into their schedule due to the constraints during the school day. So it's a very important piece, but for us, looking at STEM education and that science, technology, education, and math, I'm sorry, science, technology, engineering, and math. I like education, I work for engineers, let me just say. But so with the STEM education, we are a piece of what we see as a long pipeline from preschool all the way to career and second career, a lifetime of learning. So when you look at the amount of time you spend in school just in one 24-hour day, it's a small part of that day. When you look at how much time you spend in K through 12, even college, even graduate school, that's not the majority of your lifetime. So learning has to occur lifelong and life-wide. 10 of the most in-demand jobs last year in the STEM fields did not exist in 2004. So there's not just learning that has to happen to graduate from college and get a degree and get a job. It happens over and over and over. So creating this culture of learning, where learning is recreation, learning is a hobby, learning is what you do for fun, is started in out-of-school time programs. But we don't understand where the quality gaps are. We don't understand where the provider gaps are without the kind of data that Nichole has showed us today. Data provides accurate information to policymakers and funders so that the right decisions can be made on how to allocate resources. And it provides important information, critical information to program managers. And it can provide real-time information to instructors. to actually take information and use it in the program as it's happening. We are working with Dr. Gil Noem at the Pear Institute at Harvard University Medical School. And he's developed 2 instruments for measuring one for measuring program quality in out-of-school time STEM education, and one for measuring student outcomes, a common instrument. We are one of 5 Harvard Innovation Hubs in the country using these 2 tools, providing feedback from our grantees on the ground, how it's working. For example, in the pilot of the common instrument for student outcomes last summer, our providers said, this is way too many questions for these students to have to answer. So we shared that feedback with Harvard, and they're changing it. So we're having actual participation in how these instruments come out based on real feedback from grantees. So it's important to not reinvent the wheel with your evaluation and your assessment tools. I guess last month, the GFE OST Steering Committee group came out with a report, the Funder's Guide to Quality Out-of-School Time Programs. And I'll share this link with you because it's public and you can read it, but it's got information that will be helpful to the field as well as helpful to funders. And one of the things is that funders are no longer funding individual organizations to develop their own assessment tools. Don't reinvent the wheel. As much as we like to be entrepreneurial in Austin, and that's one of the things that's helped us using these instruments from Harvard for our summer STEM programming, is that we can not only see a local data set, but our local data set becomes a piece of a national data set. And we can see, as we did last fall with the information out of our programs, I'm finishing, this will be my last thing. Even though, for example, girls are behind boys in STEM, particularly in middle school and high school, Austin and Central Texas is tracking national trends, but our girls aren't as far behind as boys. So you can see the kind of investment, the kind of that the funders are making, the kind of difference that groups like Girl Start are making, and many others here in the area. So without that kind of information, we don't know it. So thanks.
Well, thank you very much to both of Kimberly and Melanie for sharing how they're leveraging our out-of-school time data to make decisions and to help increase access to high-quality OST programs.
So bring up your phones. We're going to do another quiz here, and at this time we're going to look further in the education pipeline to think about students, not just in the pre-K through 12 system, but as they go on to college. Here in Central Texas, what's the percentage of graduates that get any sort of post-secondary degree or credential, a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree, or a workforce certification within 6 years of graduating high school? So 35%, 29%, 21%, or 15%. Start logging your answers on what percent of our students who graduate high school get any sort of post-secondary degree or credential within 6 years. We've got a lot of votes coming in. Are you ready? Put it in quickly if you haven't. And let's see what our poll said. Most people go with 29%, or B. That's about, but we've got them all over the map. We got a lot of right answers there. 29% is the right answer. But think of that. Fewer than a third of students who have graduated high school get any sort of post-secondary credential within 6 years of graduating. So that keys up the conversation that we're going to have about effective transitions into and through post-secondary credentialing with Christine Bailey. Come on.